Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the revival of the podcast Without Banners. I'm Thomas Fireheart, and joining me are once again Maeve LaFey.
Hi.
And joining us for the first time, we have the man in black, Bill Silvia.
Hello, all.
Now, if anyone has any semblance of anything I've ever done, Bill runs a podcast that I have been a part of and still am a part of again now, anyway, called None Other Podcast. You can check them out on YouTube and Twitch. I will kind of leave it at that though for now, so we don't go on too long. So yeah, episode 2, Stormborn. Now, quite a lot to talk about when we actually get to the episode itself, which is strange for a second episode in a way. But yeah, first up we have the summary. Lord help me. Okay, first we start out on Dragonstone, and there is a storm, as there is in the title, and they even make reference to the fact that that is the weather that Daenerys was born in, hence Daenerys Stormborn. And it's basically a lot of plotting. Basically, there's a kind of a confrontation between Dany and Varys about Varys's changing loyalties, and him basically laying it out on the table that he's loyal to the people, not the people who are in charge. And then a lot of them discussing what they're going to do, the fact that they want to use Westerosi armies to siege King's Landing, while the foreign armies attack Casterly Rock. We have a scene between Olenna and Daenerys, where she gives her advice. And we also have a scene where Grey Worm and Missandei have a moment and then have sex. In one of the more romantic instances of sex, I think, in the entire show. From there, we go to Winterfell, where Jon Snow both receives Tyrion's invite that he gets from Daenerys, which I guess that's one thing I forgot to mention, that Melisandre, that's her. She has shown up on Dragonstone and basically advises her, Daenerys, to make an alliance with Jon Snow. So this is Jon Snow having got the invitation to do so, and mulls it over with Sansa and Davos. Basically, everyone tells him that he shouldn't do it, and he does it, and he goes to do it anyway. Especially the fact that he got the raven from Sam that he sent last episode, telling him that Dragonstone is built on a mountain of dragonglass. So there's something there that they could get on their side from an alliance. From there, I forget exactly when this plot thread did show up, but we have a little bit with Arya, where she meets Hot Pie again. Another returning minor character from seasons quite a while ago. And he basically informs her of the events that have happened in the North, where Jon is now king in the North, and they have retaken Winterfell. So we have basically Arya deciding that rather than continue south, she is actually going to go north now to be with her family. And during that trek north, not too far away from where she was, she has a run-in with a pack of direwolves, who turn out to be led by none other than Nymeria.
Pack of wolves with a direwolf.
Yeah, pack of wolves, sorry. I did have that thing where I was like, oh, was it all, or is it just her? But yeah. And they have a little moment, and they both recognize each other, and rather than join her, Nymeria and her pack of wolves just leave her be. From there, we go to King's Landing, where we have Cersei basically trying to use fear to get everyone on side for the war to come, and it doesn't really work. And Jamie tries to talk Sam's dad into being on side as well, but he's basically having none of it. Because he doesn't want to be an Oathbreaker, basically. And then later we have a scene where Qyburn shows Cersei that he has actually built a ballista that is specifically designed with the intention of being able to kill a dragon. So they actually have their kind of ace in the hole now to combat the dragons if need be. From there, we also have a bit in Old Town again, where we see Jorah being examined by the Archmaester and Sam, and when Sam figures out that there is a way to save Jorah, especially wanting to save him after he realizes that he is who he is, a Mormont, and that he knew Jorah's dad. And we see him try to do a now forbidden treatment to cure him of his grayscale, though of course we don't see if it's successful necessarily or not. We will probably see that later. But the risk of it is that the person who used it died of grayscale, so there's a bit of a risk there that will add a bit of drama later on. And finally, unless I am missing something, we have a bit in the Narrow Sea where Yara is taking Elaria Sand back to Dawn, only for them to be intercepted by Euron's fleet. And basically, the Sand Snakes die, or at least two of them do. Elaria and one of her daughters, or at least her actual daughter, is taken hostage, as well as Yara. We have a little moment where it looks like Theon is going to save Yara, except he has a bit of a mental breakdown and reverts, I'm assuming, back to Reek somewhat, and basically just leaps off the ship. And that's essentially, as far as I can recall, what we end on. As far as at least as far as the summary goes, I'm pretty sure I've covered everything. So going back to the start of that, we will now discuss our thoughts on what happens in Dragonstone, and we will start with Maeve first.
Okay, well, with the bit in Dragonstone, I thought that it was very clever of Tyrion to come up with, or to know his sister well enough to know that she's going to use fear and the love of Westeros to make people go to her side. Granted, it didn't work, but so I did like Tyrion's sort of war room plans and that Daenerys is listening. But I also think that she's going to not listen to him in the future, because we had that conversation between Dany and Olenna. And Olenna, talks about how she has seen a lot of shit and she has outlived all of these great men because she didn't listen to them. So we'll see that. And then also Daenerys does have a habit of using her sort of absolute morals to sort of, which doesn't really work in this world of having absolute morals. And she's not really wavering. I think she's learning to do it a little bit, but with that conversation may foreshadow her not wavering as much anymore.
Yeah.
And then, another thing about Dragonstone is the foreshadowing of what I predicted Dany and Jon finally coming together. So that will be interesting to see them meet. That's my piece.
Yeah. Okay, Bill.
You mentioned Dany potentially not listening to Tyrion in the future, and there was also one moment, specifically where the moment when she added, she gives her command to Tyrion, and then talking about Jon, she's like, and bend the knee, and the look on Tyrion's face at that moment, I'm like, there's going to be trouble in the future because she's not going to back down from something that you sensibly will need to back down for, and we don't know what whatever that is or may be. I don't know. The person I was most paying attention to during all of this was Varys the Spider. There was a lot of very interesting stuff going on with him. For one, he's a self-professed coward, and he's kind of being forced in front of this person who is absolutely willing to kill him in many horrific ways and defend his actions. There's also the moment we're covering both Dragonstone scenes sort of together, right?
Yeah.
There is also the moment later on where there's when they're talking about Jon Snow, and even Tyrion specifically refers to him as Ned Stark's bastard, and I was watching Varys's face for that entire scene for a glimpse, a glimmer, a crack, something to indicate that he knows more than everybody else in Westeros about who Jon Snow is, and his poker face is absolutely perfect, much better than Littlefinger's. So I have no idea if what how much he knows and how much he's going to betray, because he really almost has to be the one to pass on that information at this point, unless it's Bran. Those were the highlights, I think, of the Dragonstone scenes for me. It was nice. I mean, people online are talking about a lot of it as being a waste of time. I like knowing what their strategy is and having some idea of it, and it's not that different from the small council scenes that we used to see with Tywin or with Tyrion in King's Landing, so I have no problem with that.
As far as what I have to add, I was glad that we actually got something with Grey Worm and Missandei. Because for the most part they don't really have much to do, so them actually having this very intimate moment, and as I've said in the recap, probably one of, if not the only romantic sex scene I can think we've actually had, and it actually is probably the only one that can never involve any penetration because of what's happened to Grey Worm. Which I must be honest, the first time I saw that I was like, haha, that's one of the cunnilingus is probably one of the few things he can do, and then they basically show it happening, and I'm like, wow, it's only kind of like it's not in focus, but it's like you can tell that's what he's doing, and it's like, oh shit, they're actually going for that. That's okay. I must admit, I will. What this has now, the Dragonstone stuff, has me looking forward to Varys being catty with Melisandre, because it's obviously they're gonna butt heads, because as has been stated in previous seasons, he does not like her. He doesn't like what she stands for. He doesn't like magic of that nature.
Yeah, for a very good reason, I would think, considering the implications about what parts of him were sacrificed for.
Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to see them basically, at least, if not both of them bitching at each other, generally Viserys being very mistrustful of Melisandre. But anyway, moving on to that, we have what happened at Winterfell. So we'll start with Maeve again first.
Oh, there was quite a bit happened. So my main sort of interest points would be, the Jon deciding, despite the fact that they all this is one of the first times that Jon we saw it in the first episode, but he just completely disregards his people and says, instead of sending an emissary, I'm going to go and do this because we need this, and I know what's best right now. So we're seeing him kind of become Ned, which was paralleled very well with the scene in the crypt where he's, I think, praying under his father's statue, and then Littlefinger comes up and he actually holds Littlefinger in almost the exact same chokehold when he threatens to sort of sway Sansa in the same way that Ned held Littlefinger in the chokehold when he made a lewd comment about Catelyn. So that's really interesting. And I also am very eager to see if Sansa can be a competent warden of the North in Jon's absence.
Okay, Bill?
One thing I found interesting about leaving Sansa in charge is that he's taking is that Jon is taking with him his most trusted and experienced advisor, presumably to advise him on how to deal with Dany and Melisandre and whatever else. But that kind of leaves Sansa without a trustworthy advisor. I mean, she's going to be forced to lean on the exact person that Jon does not want dealing with her. And I don't think he thought that through because he's Jon Snow and he's impulsive and he doesn't think his actions through before he does them, or he only thinks through one part of them. He doesn't think through everything else. He's nowhere near, a political expert in the realm of many of the lords of Westeros. So at the very least, we're going to see a lot of changes with the dynamic between Sansa and Littlefinger because she may be forced to rely on his knowledge of the realm as time goes on, depending on what happens. There's one thing I wanted to mention with that, but I think it's probably better to deal with a different subplot, so I'll bite that for now. Other than that, I think it was interesting seeing all of the other lords kind of unanimously being against Jon heading south. So I don't know, what effect that's going to have on the dynamic between things. We didn't even see the Umbers and Karstarks come out in his favor after he helped them out last week. So, I mean, they're kids anyway, but still. I am very interested in what's going to happen with both Davos and Jon not there, and what kind of chaos, is going to occur in the near future, because I think something will happen. I just don't know what.
Yeah, like to your point with the bit with Littlefinger, you could even tell there's that shot where as soon as he says that he's leaving her in charge, not only is Sansa surprised by that, they cut to Littlefinger and Littlefinger just has this the tiniest grin on his face because he knows, if these two are going away, then that leaves me and her alone.
Although, actually, I did forget to mention Brienne is exactly thinking about what I just mentioned, so she'll have something to say, I'm sure.
Yeah. If anything, that might actually be a thing where we'll see Brienne basically stick to her like a bad smell, just to make sure that, hell, it might have even been a thing that they either filmed and didn't leave in, or that might be implied to in the future that Brienne was basically told to stay with Sansa at all times.
I mean, that's basically her role, is that she's Sansa's bodyguard. She was tasked with protecting Sansa by Cat, and for the rest of her life, she's going to hold to that oath.
Yeah. Aside from that, I didn't really have anything else, at least that I can think of now, to add. So we'll move on to the stuff with Arya, with Maeve starting us off again.
So, first of all, called it! And second of all, that was so disappointing. So, in the books, as I mentioned previously, they talk a lot about the Great Pack in the Riverlands, around the Trident, where Nymeria first fled. So when Arya was heading back up north to the Trident, we see these wolves howling, and I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, and I'm watching it with my significant other. I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna happen. She's gonna show up, and she did, and I was like, oh my god, are they gonna ride into Winterfell together? Nope. My little heart broke. I'm not gonna say I cried, but I shed a manly tear. Female version of a manly tear. So I think that they will come up again, but I don't think that it's gonna be anytime soon.
Bill?
So, in terms of Nymeria, she's not the type to join the party, but I think she will be, you know, a summon or an esper in a time of crisis. I think whatever chaos Arya rides into that we don't know about yet, whenever there's a major battle, Nymeria will show up and save Arya's life, kind of the way Ghost did with Jon a few times, except Ghost was more of a constant presence. One of the things one thing that stood out to me watching it, and one thing that stands out to me now, I've been thinking about, you know, how Arya would love to meet Brienne, and actually that's going to happen, and I think they're going to be best friends. Actually, no, they met already, so they didn't have a chance to be on the same side because she already doesn't like Brienne. But
yeah,
actually, I don't remember how she felt about them when they met, but I feel like she was standing in the way. So maybe they won't be as good friends as I thought. One thing that's interesting about that is she's heading north to run into her favorite brother. He's going to be gone, and her least favorite sibling is going to be in charge. So I'm wondering if they're going to bond or if they're going to still hate each other. But what stood out to me watching is that when she was sitting with Hot Pie, the only way she could have been more hound-like is if she called someone a cunt. She was channeling the Hound for that scene.
Well, yeah, I guess she is actually. God, there's actually kind of a weird parallel now that you bring it up. That the Hound seems to be softening in places, whereas Arya is just getting, for the most part, worse. Like she still has some. She's like she's not like irredeemable necessarily, but generally she has gone into this out of survival, if nothing else.
Right.
To the becoming more like a miniature version of the Hound, whereas the Hound is her previously had rubbed off on the Hound.
Right. And just since you mentioned that, I had really thought going into this season that Arya was going to essentially be, you know, a Terminator, one-track mind, only on revenge. And last episode kind of broke me of that thought. So I'm like, okay, she's retaining her humanity. You know, there's still, you know, enough of her parents in her. So I'm kind of wondering, you know, how she's going to change in the future.
Yeah. To your point about Sansa and Arya, I think, as far as I'm concerned, they'll probably be like a bit. Something tells me it'll be a bit of growing pains, just because they are completely different people to the last time they saw each other. God, there's been 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's been 5 seasons between when the season they were last together and now. Not counting this season anyway. I honestly think the first thing would be, if there is any kind of animosity still there, at first they'll just be happy that they're both still alive.
Right.
And then it'll go from there into a kind of, they embrace, and then like one of them will probably punch the other and be like, "What the hell?"
But I'm wondering if it's going to be a "Where's John? He's not here." What? I came to see John. What? You don't trust me to be in charge, and kind of become that kind of bickering. But it also kind of depends what's happening, because like I said, I just have this feeling of a storm cloud that Arya is going to show up and there's going to be some kind of terrible chaos, and she's not even going to get to see Sansa right away, and you know, who knows? But I don't know what would cause it at this point.
Yeah.
Arya does have pattern of just missing her family members, of like
Yeah.
being late. So that
Yeah.
probably was
Yeah.
not.
Mm. Anyway, from there we go to the fairly brief, which seems to be a trend for this season so far, at least. I'm assuming it'll change next episode, but we go to the brief bit that had with King's Landing, starting with Maeve.
Okay. So there were a couple of main takeaways. And like you said, it was very, very brief. Qyburn has come up with a ballista, which penetrated the dragon's skull when Cersei tested it, and they had that little moment of mustache twirling maniacal laughter between them. I, I'm not sure how well that's going to go over. I mean, we need to present a threat to the dragons, otherwise, us as the viewers slash readers are not going to be afraid for the dragon's existence.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that it's going to come down to it, and they're going to use these ballistas. And even though it penetrated the skull quite well, it's not going to get through the hide into the skull.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
the muscle will be a problem. I think they might kill
Mm.
exactly one dragon with them, just enough to pose a threat, but not enough to change the course of anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think
Yeah. Or at the very least, it'll be a case of the smaller dragons might be able to be taken out by it, but the biggest one, who's actually been roaming in wild for quite a bit, probably will be able to shrug it off.
Yeah,
I
I would love to see Drogon just take it and throw it to the side and be like, "What was that supposed to be?"
I actually think Drogon might die because he's the one. Like in the books, we kind of get a personality for all three, but in the show, Drogon's really the only one with a personality, and the only that we have the ability to get attached to. So I actually think even though he's the one that would be able to withstand the ballista, something else will happen to him. So I think that we might actually lose Drogon.
Okay, so was there anything else
Mm.
for King's Landing, or we right to move on?
I don't think. I'm sorry, I forget your name. Got to
Bill.
mention.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still going through your points.
Yeah.
The main part of King's Landing for me, they brought in Lord Tarley, and I'm sitting there the whole time. I'm like, why do we care about Sam's dad? Other than it's Sam's dad, and the audience, who cares about Sam will care. But beyond that, why do we care? And it was the second time I was watching the episode, and Jamie said something about you were the only general to defeat Robert in battle or something. And I'm like, that is going to matter. Because I mean, when we saw in the War of the Five Kings, we saw Robb pretty much sweep the floor with the Lannisters. I think there was one fight where Tywin was there that Robb lost, but most of the time Robb was just destroying the South with his northern army. And if we bring in somebody who's been proven and won battles before, that means that he's going to be winning something.
Yeah.
So and he's seen. I mean, he's not necessarily on Olenna's side, and he's not necessarily on Cersei's side. But it looks like it's whenever something forces him to take part in a battle, and it's probably going to either be against Dany or against the North, because that's the way the show works. It likes to crush the sides that we root for. He's going to pull a Euron on whichever side he's fighting against.
Yeah. And I guess the interesting thing is, in the books, he was actually a part of a small council, from what I can recall, wasn't he?
If so, it didn't stand out to me at the time.
Wasn't he part of Renly's Small Council?
I can't.
He might have been.
entirely-
He might have been because he's a bannerman for Highgarden, and her name's not pronounced the way it's spelled. So
Olenna?
that was her granddaughter.
Marjorie?
Yeah, Marjorie.
Marjorie. There we go. Yeah, it's spelled like Marguerite, and they pronounce it with a J. But yeah, she was originally supposed to be marrying Renly, and but it was never consummated for obvious reasons. Before they used the marriage to kind of get Highgarden, back under the sway of the Lannisters. So it would have made sense that he would have been, Renly's military advisor. Which, by the way, I don't think I mentioned with the Dragonstone area, but Dany doesn't have a military advisor right now, at least not army. She has a naval, a naval warlord who is not with her anymore, but that's not, but she had her. But the closest thing she has to a secretary of the army is Grey Worm, who was never taught to be a boss. He was taught to be an underling. So she doesn't have someone like Sir Barristan who can really, plan a siege of Casterly Rock or anything like that. So that is an interesting thing there. Someone like Lord Tarley, who is definitely going to fulfill that role for someone.
Yeah. I just checked. Kevin Lannister made him the Master of Laws in the books. So that was what he had. So I guess the thing is, the difference being here that he was given. Basically, it's a case of he's one of the characters they've played differently in the show to the books.
Or one of the ones that they essentially, one of the ones where they basically ignored the part where he was in the book, and they're like, well, let's bring him in now.
Yeah. Okay, from there we have the bit, the like one or two scenes in Old Town, starting with Maeve.
Yeah, no, that was interesting too. I do like, I forget his name. The actor playing Sam is freaking spot on all the time. I absolutely love him. He's very expressive.
Fantasy has done very good with Sams in this generation.
Everyone needs a Sam, okay? Best friend Sam, you cannot win. But yeah, no, so I was very interested in seeing him, because he started out as this unique character. We knew that he was evolving past that anyways, but he's being insubordinate to the Grand Maester, which is really
not a cowardly thing to do. When you mention how how he described himself when he first appeared.
Yeah. No, it's cool to see him move. I am afraid he's gonna get grayscale because I mean they made a point of showing with camera angles and stuff the fluids as he's off the infected skin. Sam had some sort of procedure, so other than gloves, I didn't see gloves and some disinfectant. I didn't see anything. So
yeah,
I really like.
That's what happens when your surgeon is a student.
Yeah.
It was forbidden for a reason because it's gonna spread and it's gonna be awful. But very interesting, and I cannot wait to see how it develops.
Yeah. Okay, Bill.
I hadn't thought about Sam getting grayscale, but it does make a lot of sense with the kind of warning that they gave. I do think that this is going to probably play some role in how Daenerys reacts to Jon and such, because if when they find out that Jon's best friend cures her former advisor and someone she still has various feelings and reactions toward, and he comes and helps her and possibly even fills that military advisor role I was talking about earlier, she's going to be much more predisposed to be favorable toward what Jon has to say. I've seen it mentioned that Sam obviously doesn't plan to be at the Citadel long if he keeps breaking the rules and risking getting thrown out, and that is a potential that he might get thrown out. I'm just not at the moment invested in Sam's plot enough to really have strong feelings over how I want it to go. I kind of I'm liking not necessarily not enjoying when he's on screen, but I'm not finding it as interesting or as investing to the point of forming plans and theories as compared to the other main plots.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair.
You can't feel equally about everything after all.
Yeah, yeah. It is one of those. Yeah, I do like. I do hope that it doesn't lead to him getting grayscale, or if it does, it's easily treated. Even if it just kind of ends up where he ends up like Stannis' daughter, where it's caught quickly enough that he can be cured, but it ends up leaving sort of scarring on his face.
But then he won't have the chance to sacrifice himself and gloriously to save Jon from the spear or something.
But I do figure that it'll be pretty obvious that he'll have done something, considering he went on about that he found a way to save Jorah. So unless Jorah flat out leaves after the procedure is done and just kind of hightails it out, then it is probably going to be brought up. This guy seemed fine when he left. Do you have any? It's probably gonna, he'll be called out for it, and if he doesn't get, I must admit, I'm half expecting it to be one of those cases, even though this is Game of Thrones, so it might not. But this seems like one of those cases where, he stole the book. I thought he was gonna get caught. He didn't. He's doing this, and he might not get caught, and it's like, you wonder how much they're gonna push it before he finally gets caught doing something.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if this was going to be a time where the Archmaester, Professor Slughorn comes in the morning like, okay, did he kill himself or is it time to ship him off? Oh, I'm actually fine. Sam here helped me. It's like, well, is he going to be, is he going to punish Sam or is he going to Dumbledore the whole thing?
Yeah. It wouldn't really surprise me. Actually, you know what? A way I feel like they probably might take it is Sam getting kicked out, but then like stealing robes or something and just passing himself off as a maester, even though he didn't complete
It's not
the
the
training.
robes, it's the chain.
Yeah.
You need.
Yeah, he'd have to steal someone's robe and chain, and then just be like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm done." Like I can just sort of fumbles his
You
way
were kind
through
of young to have changed so long.
it. But yeah, lastly, we have the end sequence of the episode, the most action-packed, like, at least so far, it's the first action sequence of the episode, is the whole fight on the ships with Euron. So we'll start with Maeve.
Did anyone else sort of get like a flashback to oh god, I'm blanking on names. Blackwater Bay. It's been a while since I've seen a naval one.
Right.
Yeah. God, yeah, that was like season 2? I think.
Yeah.
Damn.
It would have had to been if it was, season. Oh yeah, probably would be 2, not 1, because it didn't happen until Ned died.
It was season 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you have this little thing, and I expected something to happen. I didn't know what. I expected them to land in Dorne, and then all of a sudden the ship is rammed and everything's on fire. And the episode ended with, as you said, Theon jumping ship because
Can we call him Theon if he's jumping ship? I think we need to go back to the other name if he's doing that stuff.
Theon / Reek. But yeah, no, PTSD sucks, and he jumps ship. And I thought, now could be wrong, but I thought that it ended with a wholesale slaughter. But what you said, Tom, makes much more sense for them to have been taken hostage. Ilaria, one of her daughters. I know 2 of the Sand Snakes died,
Yeah.
and
Right.
but when they showed that last scene of Theon, or Reek, or whatever we want to call him, resurfacing and seeing the body hanging from the mast of the ship, I actually thought it was Yara, but I think
Yeah.
I got the wrong.
Yeah, it was
I mean,
the sand snake that had the spear was sticking out. Had both ends of the spear sticking out, and the one that was using the kind of whip with a blade on the end of it was hung by the thing of the ship with her own blade. By the whip.
I couldn't necessarily make out the features, but they made a very in your face point of when she was like, what are you waiting for? Kill us. No, we're not going to kill you. So that kind of made me think, okay, this is the gift for Cersei.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought the gift was going to be Tyrion's head.
Yes, as did I. But then this happened, and I was like, oh, okay.
So that's probably it. I'd probably just
the
go.
The thing about getting Tyrion's head is he doesn't like to get involved in the battle itself because he's not very good at it. I think both battles he's been in, he was knocked unconscious, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he tries to stay away from places where his head can easily be obtained.
Very smart. He's the only character that does this.
Is it time for my thoughts then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I found interesting about this is that the 3 scenes, the 3 subplots that I feel the show has shed on are Reek, which it's interesting. I saw somebody complaining about how long they dragged it in the show, but I'm like, but they cut half of it. And that's the part that annoys me is that, that they didn't go nearly deep enough. 2 is Dorne. They cut out enough of Dorne to the point where it completely twists the purpose of Dorne. And then 3, the Iron Islands plot was another one where they kind of, got some very basic gist and snipped all the rest of it off. So seeing these 3 plots all being in, combined plus bringing in the battle was kind of interesting. That battle I think would have gone wasn't necessarily affected by those changes, but it was still an interesting thing. Otherwise, Theon Reek kind of reacted exactly how I expected. I never really got the idea that Theon was ever 100% back. And he didn't know who he was in the first place, so he doubly doesn't know who he is right now. He already had, uncertain alliances. Didn't act how either side expected him to. So it makes sense that he's doubly, unsure of himself now. I saw as soon as I saw the battle happening, my first thought was, okay, who's going to die in this battle? And it ended up being the Sand Snakes. But it is going to be interesting to see. I'm a little shocked that Euron is taking his niece hostage and not killing her. So I'm wondering what's going to go on down the line with that.
Yeah. As far as the Dawn thing goes that you brought up, to me this basically just ultimately makes it seem like a lot of people were just mocking Dawn and didn't like the Dawn stuff they were doing on the show anyway. And this really seemed like them being like, okay, you don't like Dawn? Dawn's written out.
No more Dawn.
Like what few remnants of, and ultimately the thing that bugged me about that, even though this was kind of a nice, shocking kind of a twist for the end of the second episode, which the last time they did something, I'm not going to say this is on the level of it, but generally something this kind of major turning the tide thing in the second episode was Joffrey's death.
Yeah.
So this is the first, and of course that's the other thing. I was like, wow, this early? But then I realized we've only got 1 season left after this, and this is leading to essentially the end of the actual Game of Thrones as an actual like war for the throne goes, this is
Yeah,
the
because
last season
eventually
for
one of
that.
the unkillable characters is going to have to die, so they have to start
Yeah.
killing, a supporting character every episode.
Yeah. So this is like the wake up call of shit's really getting to the conclusion now. It really did. One thing that mainly bugged me, aside from like the dawn plot basically being rendered useless. It seems like you could cut them out of the story entirely, and it would not really change anything. There's only like tiny little bits here and there that you kind of need, but other than that, after Oberyn, you could basically just leave them out, and nothing would have been affected.
Yes, especially the way they ran it in the show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then the Sand Snakes go down so easily. That bugs me. Like they're tipped off as, oh, these are amazing warriors,
Yeah.
young but amazing warriors. They're cutting him up. They've like cut his neck at least several times by the way that blade on the end of that whip hits him. He gets the back of his knee slashed, and yet he's acting like he hasn't been harmed at all. And it's like, wait, what? I don't care how much of a
I can.
psychopath you are. You're gonna feel that.
I've seen it. I've seen enough adrenaline fueled berserker characters that part didn't bother me because it's entirely believable that he could be injured to the point of being near death, and while the adrenaline's still pumping, he won't feel it. I could kind of see that, but like when they sent the one girl down, when whichever one sent her, protect your mother. I really thought one sand snake was going to be enough to make that basement into a fortress.
Yeah,
But
that.
they were kind of played off as not being that much of a threat.
Yeah, that also bugged me. Like, I could get him beating them. Him beating them was fine, but him overcoming them so easily was basically the issue I had.
It doesn't help that I don't think any of Euron's underlings, no matter how significant they would be within the universe, have a name. I don't think they haven't had the chance to be like, oh, this is this is Jack. He is the greatest pirate who ever lived. He's killed millions of bodyguards or something. They haven't really fleshed out the Iron Fleet that way.
Yeah, and even Euron, it's like it's said that he's a great captain, but being a great captain doesn't necessarily mean he's a great fighter.
Right.
Granted, I can believe him being a good fighter and all that, but it was kind of like, okay, he just runs through these girls like they're nothing, and it's just like, really?
And it's interesting because the way the book dances around his scenes, you kind of wonder if his is one of the gods that are real, because there's things like he worships the storm god, and whenever he's around there's a storm, and they play him off as this malevolent force, and you never know quite how powerful he is.
Yeah.
And that I think they're following scenes as if with that, but they're not really playing that aspect of him up enough for it to be as effective.
And I guess the one thing that I did kind of like right at the end, where the whole the bit where Theon reverts back to Reek, is that Yara can basically see it coming. I think that was well done, because she's like, oh shit.
Well, yeah, she spent the entire episode like kind of protecting him. Like she knows he's nothing more than her pet, but she doesn't want anyone else to know that way because she still wants other people to have respect for him.
Yeah.
But she knows push come to shove, he's worthless.
Although I did joke when I was watching the episode that they remind us that Yara swings both ways, and then she's probably going to be dead next episode. So it's like, oh, that's a that's a thing.
By the way, I love that shrug she gave him.
Yeah, that whole bit
when she's being seduced by what's her name from Dorne, and she's like, what you gonna do?
Yeah. I must admit, I did both times I watched the episode. I laughed pretty hard at the "a foreign invasion is underway" line. But yeah, did you guys have anything else that you wanted to say, even if it's just predictions for what's coming next?
In terms of predictions, I think that at some point John is going to bend the knee to Danny. I think he's going to realize that her help with with the obsidian, with the dragons, he's going to decide that's absolutely more important than anything else, regardless of how the Lords of the North feel about it, anything, and he's going to bend the knee. That may, there may be other reveals coming in between that. I would love him to have a conversation with Varys, before making that decision and finding out that she's his aunt and everything else. But I don't know if I actually predict that part happening or not. They've the show hasn't really given any reference of anyone other than Bran being remotely likely to mention it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, as I mentioned before, I do think that the North is going to be embroiled in some sort of chaos that Sansa's going to struggle with, is going to give Littlefinger an opening, and is going to complicate Arya's return home. I just don't know from what direction that chaos would come, unless it's the battle, the White Walkers and such coming from, but down from Eastwatch by the sea. So I don't know how soon that's going to happen.
I guess the more I think of it, I said this last time, but I do feel now more than previous, leading into Sansa being put in charge, and the fact that she knows that Littlefinger is a manipulator, because he's outright basically said it to her before.
Oh yeah.
Which I find funny, because I was actually watching this video out of nowhere, and it did bring up that his one weakness is how honest he is about his intentions to her. So she actually has something on him,
right.
in a way. And
oh yeah, because we really don't know her final intention with him.
And my theory still is that she will use him, possibly marry him properly,
right?
take the reach from him, and kill him off.
The veil.
Yeah, the vow. Sorry.
Yeah.
She will take it from him through marriage or some other means, and then kill him off.
Which is interesting, because I'm fairly sure that his plan is to marry Sansa, put Jon on the Iron Throne, and then have an unfortunate accident befall Jon so that he can rise to the throne. Obviously, that's not going to happen for multiple reasons. He'd be more like, if he killed Jon, Sansa would kill him. But
yeah.
I'm kind of wondering how, what steps toward that he's going to take, and what ones she's going to go along with or counter.
Yeah, because I think the good thing is now is that there'll actually be some good drama there, because she's aware of his manipulation, rather than being what she. If this had sort of like when she was, he was able to manipulate her prior, but after all she's been through, there's absolutely no way. Like, if she feels, she'll listen to him if she feels what he's saying is actually, helpful or makes sense. But
true, but he does have the leverage of the army that he brought up with him from the south.
Like that. It'll be like her being like, well, shit, we need to keep him on side, but she'll also be keeping him at arm's length. Being like, okay, I still have to keep an eye on him to some degree, and I can't let him get away with too much.
Speaking of politics and predictions, I'm waiting for a raven from Riverrun now that the Tullys are no, the Tullys have been pretty much wiped out, at least the important ones. So Edmure should be back in Riverrun by now, and he's going to need help to get the Lannisters out.
Oh, yeah.
It is going to be, that is one of those things that I probably would have had to rewatch the entire show to actually remember, I must admit. But it almost seems like I would wonder if he'll just travel north. After he finds out what's gone down. He'll be
To be
like,
fair,
well,
the only reason I even remember him is because after each of these episodes, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos just to see, what I missed, what sort of Easter eggs there were, things other people have noticed. And a lot of people are like, hey, why didn't Arya free Uncle Edmure? And I'm like, well, as you mentioned earlier in your video, she's spent weeks pretending to be Frey in order to get all the Freys there. So she probably did free him. It's just not on screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even then, that's like, if that's, I guess that's, is he as, I forget, has he been referred to as actually still being alive? Or, oh no, yeah,
They were
he is,
keeping
sorry,
him.
yeah.
They were keeping him alive in order to basically, I think, to justify to the people of the Riverlands their right to rule. To kind of prevent open revolt in the Riverlands.
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, as soon as I said that, I remembered, oh yeah, they tried to use him as a bargaining chip. In either the last season or the season before. And that didn't work out. But yeah. I don't really think I have any other predictions, but honestly, I'm kind of surprised there was no. With all the bloody ravens that John's getting, I'm surprised there wasn't one to say, "Hey, Bran's alive." So I'm guessing there'll either be something about that next episode, or generally like by the end of the, I'd say by the, oh god, you can't even say by the midpoint, because the midpoint will be a bit iffy because there's only like 7 or 8 episodes this season. But yeah, I'm assuming that'll probably happen as well, and that'll even throw another thing in. It's like, okay, now we've got to go get Bran away from the wall. So like, are they just gonna send him down from the wall, or are they gonna? Is someone actually going to retrieve him from Winterfell? Or like, that's gonna, and if anything, that's probably even gonna throw another wrench in Littlefinger's plots, because it's like, oh shit, I thought there was only one Stark left. Now
Right.
there's Arya coming up, and Bran coming
technically,
down.
Bran technically, by the laws of Westeros, should be King of the North ever since the Red Wedding.
Yeah, he's the only legit male Stark left.
Yeah.
I also think it'll be interesting if it slips out, Jon's parentage. If Bran ends up saying something to anybody, and whether it'll be Sansa or Littlefinger or Brienne who is the one to overhear it, if so.
So yeah, that's about all I have, and I'd say that's about all we have in general. So we'll just call it there. If you like this, feel free to give us a like and comment and let us know what you think. Next week we will be talking about episode 3, which, if I can recall, is going to be called The Queen's Justice. So, I'm Thomas Fireheart. I was joined by Maeve LaFey and Bill Silvia, and we will see you next week.
See you then.
See you then.